Hi, and welcome to the 64 Doors. Today we're going to open door 62. Here we find an archetype that is all about language, precision, and organization. We are going to explore this archetype from a human design perspective and a gene key perspective and bridge the gap between the two systems. So right now, we see here the rave mandala and the sun in the 62. That means the earth is in the 61. And you can see now that we have been through all the archetypes from the 38 all the way through Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, and now Cancer. So we've gone through all these, and now we are already into the programming partners of the first half of all the transits of the year. And that's exciting because we're going to start to see who is the programming partner, who's the best friend of that archetype that we were looking into in the beginning of the year. So 62 and 61 are programming partners. And then in the Rave Mandala, the way that this works is that if somebody's born today, that means that we also have an activation 88 degrees back, or 3 months back in time. And here is the 42 in Aries and the 32 in Libra. So this is the design part of the cross. This is the personality part of the cross. In human design, this is called the incarnation cross. In Gene Keys, this is called the activation sequence. This would be your life's work. This would be your radiance. So that's how we bridge the gap, or how we understand what the incarnation cross and the activation sequence is. And we know in both systems this makes up 70% of who you are when we include the profile. And the profile is what we get when we look at what day in the transit is this person born. Each transit is 6 days. So here, for example, we see 62 starting here on Sunday the 12th, and it goes all the way through to Friday the 17th. And you can even see here in colors, it's a little bit confusing because this is the line number, not the date. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for each of them. So depending on what line you're born in, that's part of your cross. And then you're not going to have the same line on the design side, because this is not a 90-degree angle cross. This is an 88-degree angle cross. That's where you're going to have a different line in your design part. And that makes it exciting because you're not just one line, you have two main lines that are always going to have to work together. So in this specific transit, where we have the 62 as personality sign or life's work, we're going to have 3 different crosses: the cross of Maya, the cross of detail, and the cross of obscuration. You can also see, due to this 88-degree angle, that it's going to be a different cross for the right angle. So 42 and 32 is the design part. And then in the other 2 crosses, we have the 3 and the 50. So I think I'm going to actually read, because they're quite different. If you think about 3 and the 50 comparing to the 42 and the 32, they have a very different flavor. The right angle cross of Maya is you have the great ability to discover and remember small details. These details will be important in your life, and you will be driven to share them with others. So this is somebody with a 62 that can be very valuable in an organization, for example, that has that language, that focus, that precision of things. Then the cross of obscuration is different. So the energy of your cross is here to ask questions and examine patterns to find deeper understanding. Is everything okay, or is it working itself out? You are driven to ask the questions that help figure out a logical perspective to why we are at the particular place. These questions call for the answers to help logically sort it all out. And we know that the 50 moves from corruption up to harmony, for example. So you can see that. And I would really say, go into, if you have the 62 as your life's work or your personality sign, go in a little bit more into each cross. Also make your gene key profile, where you have a paragraph on each one of the gates or gene keys, where you can understand more what it means to have that key in that exact position, knowing that the activation sequence is really where we activate our DNA, where we always start. It's more explained in the gene keys that that's how we start. In human design, you're just going to see at the top of the body graph that you have those 4 numbers, but it's nothing telling you like go there and look there. We're kind of more drawn to naturally to look at the actual body graph, right? So here we have the 62 is pointing from the throat center up to the ajna, and we have been in the 17 already this year, so you can go back in the 64 doors and read about the 17. And the channel is called the channel of acceptance, a design of our organizational being. The 62 is the gate of details, the preponderance of the small, and you can also compare it to the 9, which has to do with details in a little bit in a different way. I think it's interesting to read the 62 and the 9 and understand what they have in common and how. And then people with an eye for detail and who always need to know the facts. And I would say this is also a human design way of explaining it. When we look at the gene keys, we're going to see that it's more vast than that, and it can also be more contracted than that. So that's quite interesting. So some of the keywords, to repeat them: detail, routine, facts, internal motivator, the drive to name things, and logic, and the Achilles heel. And this is interesting. This is also something I want to go in more to. It tends to be more masculine than feminine. So when we look at the programming partners, the 61, there's all about inspiration, right? And then the 62 is kind of, the 62 is the scientific, the more masculine, and the 61 is inspiration, the more feminine, the more kind of right brain, the more mystical in a sense. So mystical and scientific. And programming partners always work together. So when you have like more of one and not the other, your risk of being biased, your risk of not being really in your center. For me, for example, I have the 61 as my south node and the 62 as my north node on the design side, on the inner side. And I feel like always in my life, I have that kind of feeling both. And I think I've tend to maybe go into a little bit of the shadow of the intellect sometimes, which is also something we're going to see when we go into the codon ring, because I also have the 31, and they are programmed together, the 62 and the 31. So a little bit of an Achilles heel here, to focus too much on the fact, on the science, and not allowing the inspiration, not allowing the inner truth, not allowing the great mystery enough. And then let's go into the human design. So the way that human design works no, this is the gene keys. The way the gene keys work is that it's a frequency band. The way human design works is that we have that body graph. We see the snapshot of the energy. We see how energy moves inside the body graph. If we put 2 body graphs on top of each other, we're going to see how the energy moves between 2 people, where there is resonance, where there are synergies, also where there can be challenges. It's a kind of energy snapshot. Here now we see in a bigger picture the energy. So we see that each activation, each gene key can be lived out in a tense and it's a tense contracted fear frequency. And it can also be lived up in a more expansive frequency that has more to do with love than with fear. So when we see the 3 words in the living library, we have red, green, and blue. So red is the very contracted, narrow intellect and psychosis. So you can see here, when we have those contracted, kind of the masculine, the feminine, contracted state, it's really not fun. Intellect and psychosis, kind of wanting to figure out why, and going around in a loop forever. And then the higher frequency, precision, inspiration, impeccability, sanctity. Here you see again the programming partners are so important, going so much hand in hand. So the shadow of intellect and the repressive and the reactive is pedantic and obsessive. So we could say it's really about being too stuck on the facts, on the routine, and not being able to like think outside the box. And here you can also see that the 17, which is the harmonic gate of farsightedness is so important. But that gate in the lower frequency is all about opinion. So it just adds to that narrow-mindedness. So often if you look at the harmonic gate and the programming partner, in some cases it's going to be the same. So it's only the 42 and the 30, the 40, no, the 43 and the 23, for example, are going to be the same harmonic gate as programming partner. The same happens with the 37 and the 40. It's the same programming partner and harmonic gate. But in most cases, you're going to have programming partner and harmonic gate. So look at the three of them and look at the three frequencies, and you're going to see how they create patterns that kind of want to keep the frequency either low or high. So as human beings, we're always going to be able to exist on that whole frequency band from the lowest to the highest, and we can swim in it, you could say. And our really where we learn most and where we evolve is when we are in the green, when we are in the pathway of the gift. That's where we evolve, that's where we learn, that's where it's most human. We go down into the shadow, and then we come back in the kind of the path of the gift. And the highest frequency is the creator frequencies. It's really when we are kind of one with creation, and then we go into impeccability and sanctity. It's a interesting city. So I would absolutely say for the cities, read the Gene Key book, because that's really the true transmission of the Siddhic frequencies. I really love the codon ring of no return. So this is a codon ring with only two gene keys, and it's tyrosine, and it's the throat, and it has to do, for me, I would say it has to do with leadership and the new world. So I'm actually going to read this one to you. Codon ring. So the ring of no return. This mysteriously named codon, the ring of no return, refers to the evolutionary process that takes place when higher consciousness reaches the throat center in the human being. The throat center is where the greatest human initiation occurs. This is the great initiatic leap from the fourth causal body into the fifth buddhic body. And here I would say either read the 7 secret seals or the 22nd gene key to understand also these different subtle bodies. Once you begin to speak your truth and the higher involutionary currents begin to use your voice to transmit their truth, there is no return. At this point, you have broken away from the lower realms forever, taking the leap for worship to embodiment. So this is super, super interesting. I wish there would be much more on this, but as you know, there's not a lot on the codon rings, and the Living Library is basically the only place where you can really tap into them. And then they are mentioned in the Gene Key book, but not like it's not a special place for them. They're just named in some of the gene keys. So if we go to the I Ching, small powers, thunder over mountain. So still with that mountain on the bottom that we've had for a while. We were mountain over mountain in the 52 a little while ago. So thunder appears in the hilltops, the spiritual transmission channels through mindful stillness and heartfelt gratitude. And you see here 52, the keywords, and this is 51, the keywords. So 51 and 52 are making up the 62. Astrology, we are still in Cancer, so it's about service to others through caring waters of unconditional love, nurturer, caregiver, and life bringer. If we go into integral human design, we have that channel of organization, also called acceptance, dismemberment, organization, wholeness. And I even looked up that word because I was not sure. Deprive of limbs, divide limb from limb. And that was what I thought. I was like, how can that be? But then divide into parts, cut into pieces and mutilate. Then I understand more, because that's what the 62 does. It focuses too much on the details. It doesn't see the big picture. And the same with the 17, when it is in its opinion, it doesn't see the big picture. So that's really a shadow frequency. It's like just cutting things into pieces and not being able to be to have the bird's eye view, basically. And then organization, yeah, to be able to see the details, to be able to make sense of them, to be able to speak them. So that's absolutely why we say that this is the channel of organizational being. And Dream Arc, you can go to Jane Addams' blog, where she's every transit she's drawing rattlesnake, lynx, and woodpecker. And the mudras, Richard has a mudra for each city. So that's a way, not a left brain way, but a more creative way to take in the city frequencies of the keys. And yeah, I think that probably is what we need to say about it this way. So this week, I mean, you could look at your skills this week and be, where are you really good at articulating things, and where in your life is there maybe a need for organization? Where is there a need to look a little bit more into the details and not just skim over things? Some other questions would be about the mind. You know, do you have this mind that is going and that needs to have the answer before it can switch off? That would be the 61 and the 62 kind of together in the psychosis and the intellect. I think also knowing that the 61 and the 62 are these kind of archetypes of the feminine, the masculine, or scientific and the mystic. So look in your life, if you have that, like true intelligence is really a combination of both. So look at how you are with that, and maybe do things that are also stimulating your right brain. And look at your body graph and see, where do the arrows on the top of your head, where do they point? That's your mind and your brain. Are you receptive? Are you more to the right? Are you passive, more the new kind of brain that is evolving, that's more taking in? Or are you that focused, more action-oriented brain to the left? Because that probably can point you a little bit to whether you are more kind of leaning towards the 62 or the 61. And also, this is the city of light language. So have you tried to speak light language? Is that something that you like? I know that for me, many times I can kind of feel other frequencies in light language than just, you know, because it is something that often even the person that is channeling is not understanding exactly what it means. So I'm quite, when it comes to light language, I'm quite a little bit skeptic. And I think maybe because the 62 is my north node, it really needs to be impeccable. I only want the highest frequency. Otherwise, I feel it's weird, or it's like, it doesn't feel right. So it's an interesting week, and I'm wishing you a good week, and I will be back in the next transit. Thank you.